Yes, YouTube. So decided to do a bit of a different one. Was going to go down very basic advice, and well, it is still basic, but was going to go down very, the generic route in terms of physique development and transformations and how to get yourself a little bit further, whatever you're progressing to. And I was going to go along the very generic advice of fat loss, like I have done. But I think I'm going to cover the factors that people don't look at and how to actually understand if you are making progress, because you see a lot of times people are too often focused entirely on scale weight. And yes, it'll tell you one side of the story, but it will not tell you every side of the story. It will not help you pick up things that you need to be able to pick up on very quickly in order to stop you from plateauing or, stopping progression. So we're going to go over a few things that people miss. People maybe don't understand what they're looking for or don't understand how to interpret how they're feeling, and maybe little bits of feedback. You're getting weaker in the gym, maybe your sleep's starting to go to shit, and what areas you need to be looking at depending on if you are growing or if you are looking to lose body fat. Now, the first one being sleep. Hear me when I say this, you can only progress from what you can recover from. You can do as much training and as much volume as you want. If you can't recover from it and you start getting weaker, then there is no point. So sleep, out of all the drugs you could possibly think of, out of all the fancy ass supplements that Becky from around the corner is telling you to get, sleep is where it's at. If you don't have sleep nailed, you are leaving a lot to chance. You are leaving yourself open to injury risk. You are leaving yourself to just be a miserable bastard 24/7 as well. Because who likes being tired? But easy things to fix up your sleep. Make your room cooler. So stick a fan in there, or, open the windows. Have a hot shower before you go to bed. You need to be dropping your body temperature to fall into good quality REM sleep. So having a hot shower, you're going to raise your body temperature and then allowing you to come back down once you step out. It'll help your sleep quality out quite a bit. It's certainly helped for me. Removing stressors. If you are the type of, I'm going to go with major issue kind of person who likes to watch horror films to fall asleep, then I would potentially cut that out. Unless you are completely unfazed, then you probably need to have some form of check or hard drive check, but it's not good. You are in fight or flight, you're watching something that is tensing you up. It's not the most relaxing environment. You aren't gonna really help yourself falling asleep if you do have issues. And then lastly, getting rid of that, right? The amount of adults or any individual that just sit with a phone glued to their head again and again and again and wonder why they can't sleep. This light on your phone is gonna mimic the sunlight, right? We are conditioned through thousands of years of evolution that when we see sunlight, we naturally start to feel a little bit more awake. So if we have something that mimics that pressed up against our face in the form of TikTok at 1 o'clock in the morning when you're watching some bullshit idiot like me talk about fitness again, you are going to stay awake for longer. Put it away. Wear some blue light blocking glasses. Turn the brightness down on your screen. Do these things to limit your exposure to it and you will fall asleep a lot easier. And then lastly is magnesium. The reason why it's last is because you want to do all the natural things first before supplementing. 10 milligrams of elemental magnesium per kilo of body weight is a rough guideline to go from. When you're dieting, expect when you are lean for this to start to become a little bit broken sleep, for the quality of your sleep to start to dip, because when your body's crying out for hunger, it thinks it's gonna die. It thinks that there is no way out and you are in serious shit basically. So all it's gonna do is keep waking you up and go, I'm hungry, I'm hungry, I'm hungry. And that's when sleep quality's got to, well, it will dip. And if you are starting to get quite lean or you're going leaner than what you have, expect a dip in the quality of your sleep. If you are starting from quite a high body fat percentage and you start to decrease that body fat, your sleep quality will actually more than likely probably get better. So that is another sign, depending on how far you are starting from or where you're starting from, if it is working or not, aside from scale weight. Now, if you're growing tissue, it is incredibly important that at the end of the day, when you're in the gym, that is where the stimulus is happening. That's where you're breaking down tissue. The part where it's growing is in sleep. Okay, so if you fuck sleep off and neglect it and just, again, stay on your phone till 1 o'clock in the morning, then you're pissing away the effort and energy that you've put in throughout the entire day when you're missing the most basic thing out. If your sleep quality begins to slip when you're in a off season or a gaining phase, then use the previous tips that I've just said in terms of magnesium, making the room cooler, removing any systemic stress that you can to make it a little bit more chilled out. But the sleep quality shouldn't really be taking too much of a dip, in my opinion. The next point being your energy, right? Again, dependent on where you're starting from. There is no one definitive answer for all of this. But if you are starting from quite a high body fat or quite a high body weight, then when you start to lose a little bit more body fat, you will naturally feel a little bit more energetic. Your body's technically more efficient, so you will be able to move a bit better, feel a bit better. You'll be sleeping a little bit better because there's less stress on your body physically. So you will naturally feel a bit more well rested, and you'll probably start, bouncing around the place all the time. When you start to diet and when you start to really go into a little bit lower body fat, you start to push the envelope a little bit, your energy is obviously going to dip. You are in a deficit of calories. You are not eating as much as what your body needs. That is the whole basis of fat loss. So having your energy low is natural. It doesn't mean that, your energy being low is a good sign, but it is a key indicator that you are moving in the right direction. But it is not a race to crash and slump your energy. It doesn't mean the less energy you've got, the leaner you're going to be. It's person dependent on when that happens and how drastic it is and how drastic of a diet you're putting yourself through, but expect it to drop. That's normal. Now, if you're growing and you're gaining tissue, there are two arguments to this: that when you start, you will obviously have a little bit more energy. You've got a surplus of food, you've got a surplus of calories, your body has more energy to work from. When you start pushing the envelope in that direction in a positive way and you start to really hammer home food, the majority of your energy is going to go into repair and digestion. When you are piling food on top of food, meal after meal, in your stomach, your digestion has to work in order to break it down and keep up with the pace that you're providing it. So you're naturally going to start to feel a little bit sluggish. You naturally potentially might actually find it harder to wake up in the morning and get out of bed and have that natural burst of energy because your body is working on the inside to deal with all of the things that you're doing. But your energy should be pretty okay. Once you start to push that envelope, you've got to be careful with the amount of calories that you're pushing up, because the last thing you want to do is completely tank very early on, 2 months into a gaining phase or an off season, and then leave yourself fucked for the other 4. Third bit being digestion. So if we look at it from a fat loss perspective, you should be churning through the food quite easily. If you're not, then it's down to the food sources more than likely, or maybe external stress. So if your digestion is playing up, look at the foods that you're having. Are you having any foods that are from, not single food ingredients, like single whole food sources? Like, for example, rice. It's rice. Do you know what I mean? But if you're eating, processed shit, then your body is having to break down quite a fair bit. You want to try and remove that. Stop putting your digestive system under so much strain and stress. Make it a little bit easier. And again, you're not eating as much food as what your body wants, so you should feel pretty empty. Digestion obviously start to clear up a little bit. However, when you're starting to get to the back end of a diet, it will start to slow down. Now, this is grim when you think about it, but hear me out. You are going to be going to the toilet a little bit less. Now, what I mean by that is your body is in complete survival mode to try and keep everything as sane and as normal and as easily survivable for you as possible. When you start to push that envelope again, when you start to diet down, your body ain't gonna want to shit anything out. It really isn't. It's gonna want to keep it. There is no excess for you to get rid of. So going to the toilet, digestion, you might feel a bit constipated, you might have a few bloats, a few cramps. That might become a little bit of an issue. Then it's probably time to assess with your coach or bring up food a touch and then drop it back down with a refeed or some other form of little break. It depends on how far you are. It depends on what you are going for at the end of the day. Now, digestion in an off season, in the opposite direction, you need to keep that as clean and as consistent as possible. The moment that gets fucked, you've had it, all right? You are going to be pushing a surplus of food for a prolonged period of time. You are going to be pushing it again and again and again, as and when needed, not like a child who's just been introduced to sweets for the first time. You are going to be pushing up food when needed. When your body weight potentially stops responding, you stop getting a little bit stronger, it's potentially time to push it. It is one thing eating food. It is another thing digesting it. And I know this because I was that prick. I was that idiot that decided to whinge about eating 5,000 to 6,000 calories a day. Well, I thought that anyway. Eat 5,000 to 6,000 calories a day and say, I can't gain weight. No matter what I do, I can't gain weight. I could have. I just didn't know, and I didn't have the education at the time, and nor did anybody else around me. But once your digestion goes, That's it. You aren't using that food. It's one thing being able to eat 5,000 calories worth of McDonald's and KFC and whatever you want to eat, but it's another thing being able to eat 4,000 or 5,000 calories of whole, clean food as consistently as possible, pushing weights up as consistently as possible, getting a good amount of hydration, 3, 4, 5, 6 liters, and still be able to digest that well. If you push food too quickly, your digestion will go. That's why you need to progress things slowly. If you start eating shit very consistently, your digestion will probably start to go a little bit as well. So you want to keep that as clean as possible while you are pushing your body weight up. Now, the final point being stress. Now, before I start going into stress, there's only a certain amount of it that you can avoid, right? We all have stresses from different areas of life, and nobody's stress is greater or better or whatever than anybody else's, because it's person dependent. Your level of stress may be a lot higher in your tolerance compared to mine, right? Same other way around. But stress is the biggest killer of everything. You're not going to be able to control every aspect of stress. Some people in your day-to-day, potentially at work, potentially in your family, are just going to piss you off, and if that's unavoidable, then there's a part of it where that is out of your control. Maybe some of that has to be accepted, or maybe some of that has to be addressed. It, again, depends on the situation. But stresses that are in your control, whether you drink consistently, you put yourself into a hungover position, you don't get the shit done with the family or for work or with your partner that you need done on Sunday, leading you completely stressed on Monday, shit sleep, that's within your control. It doesn't mean that you have to stop drinking, it just means that you have to stop binge drinking consistently as a way of coping. Not that I know what I'm talking about in that aspect. But stress, when you're bringing your cortisol up in your blood, is the biggest killer regardless of what you're doing. If you want to try lose body fat and you are incredibly stressed, good luck, you'll need a miracle. You'll make it so far, but if you were able to lower that stress, then obviously the body is going to start to respond a lot better to the things that you are trying to get it to do. And the same with growing, right? Your body needs to have all of its energy focused on being able to grow tissue. If it is so consistently bothered about having to be in fight or flight, to deal with stress, to deal with whatever's coming its way, then it's not going to be able to put the time and effort that it needs to be able to put into building muscle. You are going to get less than effective results for the effort that you're putting in. So any stresses that you can control, maybe you need to have a conversation with somebody, maybe you need to sort out that bill or whatever, I don't know, maybe you need to go have a little bit of a blowout, it's person dependent, but whatever stress that you've got going on, deal with it first before starting to lose body fat or to gain tissue. If you go into one or the other and you do not address external stresses in your life, they will only magnify the problem, right? Losing body fat will only magnify the problem, right? It will, because the process of getting there is difficult. The process of being able to cut food and increase your expenditure is another stress on your body. When you bring up another stress on your body and you're already stressed outside of that, you are just gonna have a complete wobble and you're gonna have a breakdown. I've been there. You will just end up shagged, to be honest. That's the only way I can put it without sounding too technical or trying to make myself seem like a bit of a smart arse. You'll end up shagged, right? You will just not be able to recover. And your body will not want to drop as much body fat compared to if it wasn't as stressed. Now, growing tissue, if you've got high levels of cortisol in your blood, potentially for blokes, it can affect ever so slightly testosterone levels, recovery capabilities for male and female. So focus on external stresses that you can avoid. Very key emphasis on that you can avoid. If you can't avoid certain stresses and you can't become completely stress-free, because if you can, I think you're unemployed, to be honest. But yeah, if you can't control the stresses that you need to control, you are gonna make the journey a lot harder, right? Stresses that you can't control, it is a case of mitigate, breathe and accept it, because you're gonna spend your life worrying about if you can or can't control certain people's actions. It's not gonna work. So those are just a few markers and things that I think people potentially aren't aware of when it comes to changing their physique, changing the way that they feel, changing the way that they look, because the entire industry is focused on scale weight. And quite frankly, nobody cares. Nobody gives a shit. I have never once been asked, apart from when I was 16 playing rugby, how much do you weigh, right? Because nobody cares. At the end of the day, if you could snap your fingers and you looked completely in the way that you want to, but you were 10 kilos heavier on the scales, would you accept it? 99 times out of 100 you probably will. Everything from girls, from dress sizes and models, and like, she's this size and he's got, you know, he wears extra large or he wears baggy fit or something like that. That was certainly a thing that I used to consider when I was younger. Everybody's focused on the scale weight, and I certainly was, and I pushed my off season last time to near 240 pounds. Guess what? I was fat. I was fat and I was too soft, too overweight, because I was just constantly trying to fill my ego with how much can I push the scales. My digestion went to shit, my energy went to shit, my sleep went to shit. When I dieted down, I actually found that I didn't grow as much tissue as I wanted. So I'll be rectifying those areas, and I'll also be showing you how I rectify them in later videos. So when you are trying to drop body fat or build tissue or change your body composition, you need to focus on those areas and try fix up as many as possible before you start pushing in one direction or the other.